So just going over some of the wood gathering and shelter building tools that I use out in the bush. To the far left I use a cold steel rifleman's hawk, and I've profiled the edge to more of a convex grind, which is good for wood splitting. It's quite a bit of a taper than a regular hatchet from the handle, so it's great for splitting wood, hammering in tent pegs or what have you. Different applications, and it's fairly lightweight. I believe it weighs about just under half a kilogram. And I prefer this to any of the knives, either my survival knife or the Kershaw at the end, for splitting purposes, wood splitting purposes, just as there's a lot more inertia at the end of an axe head than there is at any point along a knife or a knife blade. So I do most of my wood chopping if I end up taking that. And again, this is a lot of the stuff that I would take on extended camp trips or backpacking trips. On the far right hand side, I've got a D2 Kershaw. Not sure if you can see that. It's D2 steel. It's got a very fine edge to it. The profile tapers down quite a bit, a fair bit. So it makes it a very light knife, even though the spine of it's pretty well a 1/4 inch thick. And it's about 25 centimeters of blade, and it's kind of a bola or kukri style shape to it, and it's got a lot of swing for hacking through light brush, even arm or leg sized trees I wouldn't mind swiping through. But again, the profile of it is fairly a thin taper towards the edge of the blade, so as sharp as it is, for not doing any heavy hacking with it, especially in hardwoods, just because it is such a fine taper. And this is it's actually my wife's machete, so I probably wouldn't be taking it out in the bush with me, as I prefer to use a saw or a hatchet and a knife combination rather than a machete. I live in a pine type spruce forested area, so I do a lot of the cutting with this silky saw, silky Gontaro. I don't know if you can see it there. Get better lighting. Comes with a good sheath. I decided to use this instead of a buck saw or one of the folding saws. I used to have one that had a little knob that you slid inside the handle and out, but I found it always slipped and drew in or hit my hand along the spine. So this has got a nice grip. I mean, even if my hands are wet or cold or wearing gloves, this is never going to slip. So it's got large teeth. I think it's about 8 teeth per 30 millimeters. So it's quite large teeth. It's chrome plated. It cuts extremely well. It's 270 millimeters long. So it's got a fair length for cutting, width, wide trees. Next is my survival knife with a homemade leather sheath that I made out of scrap saddle leather. I think I put this on my last video. It's what I was using to hack tree branches off my shelter for my lean-to. I came back and reprofiled the edge to a convex grind. Not a full convex grind, as the taper still is straight down and then rounded at the end. I prefer that grind for chopping, a lot of heavy chopping, but also the convex grind allows for really good feather sticks for fire building and for a lot of outdoor applications actually. But I found on my last trip that the handle shape was fairly narrow, so as I was hacking through, it was tending to slide off my handle. So I deepened the finger grooves on it, and it's a lot easier to hold on to. I got a good grip. So that's my survival knife. Sort of for my day-to-day use, I use this Gerber. I knocked off the handles and put cherry handles on it. I find it holds my hand a lot better. It's quite a bit thicker than the other two handles that I had on there. I just epoxied them on. And the blade's about 9 centimeters long in this, so it's pretty small, but I use this a lot for gutting or skinning game. It's my general purpose hunting knife. For backup and for any whittling or wood carving purposes, I use my Mora, as this is just a single bevel knife, meaning that it's a straight edge there and only one bevel going down on either side. This is a very fine, very sharp, shaving sharp knife. Actually, all my knives are very sharp. And those are my tools. And I believe in keeping them good and sharp. All these hold exceptionally well at edges. The only thing dangerous than a sharp knife in the bush is a dull knife, as it takes a lot more effort to get through wood or any material that you're cutting through, a lot more force than you would regularly use. So if it happens to come out, go into your leg, or any other body part for that matter. If you're newer to bushcraft, I wouldn't suggest a hatchet. As far as axes go, I would suggest something with a longer handle. Longer handled axes are quite a bit safer to use than shorter, in that in your chopping chores, the longer the handle, it's more likely to go into the stump or the dirt if you miss, rather than your knee or your shin, as a hatchet will. It's just sort of where you're swinging. So clearing any path to where you're swinging, making sure you know where your aim is. Any wood chopping, wood splitting, brush hacking, keep safety in mind. So most of these I probably wouldn't put in my survival kit. I would probably only take a couple of these with me on any outing, especially if I'm going out hunting or on a fishing trip. I would probably only have 1 or 2 knives and probably the saw, and I would leave the hatchet and the Kershaw at home. But if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of wood gathering for any reason of either fire building or shelter building, I'd be bringing most of these tools with me. Just to have diversity in my capabilities out in the bush. Like, sure, any of these tools can probably do all of my needs, but if, as far as efficiency in the bush, especially in a survival situation, you want as much diversity and as much wood cutting capabilities that you possibly can. So bringing a good sturdy saw, a good hatchet for chopping, good knives for whittling or fine woodworking, trap building, and the like. So yeah, there's my collection of my mainstay of woodworking tools and bushcrafting tools.